talents to maximum capacity. He is committed to family and to our community, a worthy example to inspire these wonderful graduates. I present Russell Hancock.
Thank you. President Riches, Principal Gardner, distinguished members of the board, wonderful faculty, loving parents, grandparents, and friends, and of course, most significantly, you, the graduating members of the class of 2010. To all of you, I say thank you. I'm deeply humbled and honored by your invitation to join these festival rites. I have to tell you that I'm just completely awash in sentiment. This is a special place, there's a special feeling here. Yesterday, my own son graduated Gunn High School, and the sentiment there was almost too much to bear. These are tender and emotional times, certainly for you, but also we want you to understand for your parents and all of those people that brought you here. You actually have no idea. You just don't even know. You think you do. But your parents love you. They love you so much. They love you unconditionally. They would die for you. You know, my daughter, 15, she went tripping off to school this morning, and I'm looking at her as she goes away, and I'm thinking, I love you more than my own life. I would do anything for you. If anybody touches you, I would kill them. Or maybe I wouldn't, but I know a guy. But the funny thing is, the words that actually come out of your mouth are, did you remember your lunch today? And so we just want you to understand that your parents love you. They absolutely love you. So graduates, right now, stand up, face your parents, and give them the ovation and the applause that they so richly deserve. I'm serious. Stand up, find them, face them, and I want you to applaud them. That's right. That's absolutely right. Now this is a nerve-inducing experience for me because I've never actually addressed a commencement exercises before. Unless you count my own high school graduation, and I had the privilege of speaking there. And it was a right good speech. And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to recycle it. I have it right here, and I was taught to reduce, reuse, and recycle. And it was filled with youthful wisdom and some things that were extremely prescient. And so I am going to now read it to you today. Ladies and gentlemen, long-suffering faculty, ruthless administrators, fellow graduates of the class of 1980. I predict that the music of the Bee Gees will remain the gold standard against which all future music is measured. I predict that President Jimmy Carter's important message about our careless use of energy will propel him to his second term. I predict that one day a black man will be elected President of the United States, and it will bring an end to racism in our country and usher in a new era of post-partisanship. I predict that computers will one day become personal devices. They will be networked together so that all the world's information will be available all of the time. And the effect on people will be transformative. It will raise the level of our dialogue. Our discussions will be highly informed. Voting rates will improve, and America will achieve a new state of rational enlightenment. The effect will be so enervating that people won't waste any more time on mindless games or idle chit-chat. Okay, I didn't actually say any of that. Really, Really, my graduation speech was the world's greatest collection of callow and insipid remarks. It was pretty much a bunch of crowing about becoming grown-ups, finally becoming grown-ups and entering this new world with chutzpah. That's what my speech said. Well, I would like to tell you that today I'm a grown-up. I'm actually a grown-up now, and this is what's so fascinating. Grown-ups don't feel any different. They don't feel any different at all. I still feel like a child. Inside, I'm still incredibly insecure and vulnerable. We feel incredibly vulnerable. When I was 7, it was the height of the Vietnam War. My parents had the television on, watching the TV news every day. And it was nothing but bad news, ghastly news, right? Terrible fighting, and young boys coming home in body bags. And I saw this on the news, and my 7-year-old mind grasped this, and I was afraid. I didn't want any part of that. And so I told my mother, actually I cried to my mother, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to do that. And she held me and rocked me and said, you don't have to grow up. It's not necessary. You don't have to. You don't have to grow up any sooner than you feel like it. And I have held her to that. I'd like to tell you that you can actually remain a child as long as you want. You know, the first day on my job, after I'd finished college and graduate school, I now had a job. And I sat down, they gave me an office, it had a desk, it had a phone, and I just laughed. It was hilarious to me. And then a guy came to see me, and he sat down across from my desk, and he's old. And he's asking me questions. And I just broke out in laughter. I laughed. I just laughed at him. I couldn't believe that this was me. He didn't realize that I'm just this dumb kid with insecurities and vulnerabilities. So it continues. It absolutely continues. I was talking to Chuck Reed yesterday. Chuck Reed's the mayor of San Jose, and I had the privilege of working with him and other elected officials. Yesterday we had this big summit. We pulled together all of Silicon Valley's mayors and all of Silicon Valley's city managers, and we're in this big room seated around this big, enormous table, and we're talking about really important regional issues. And as it began, I turned to Chuck Reed, the mayor of San Jose, seated next to me, and he's chairing our board of directors. And I said to Chuck, how did we get here? How did this happen? What's going on here? Do you feel up to this? And he said back to me the same thing. He says, I don't know how this happened. I just, and then he said something really interesting. He said, people think that the world is being run by wise, sage, experienced adults. It's not. It's being run by us. It's us. It's just us. And what it is a bunch of insecure men and women who don't know what they're doing, but they're trying to figure stuff out. So as you go forward, I'm going to wish upon you a couple of things. First is that you don't grow up. You don't need to do that. So don't worry about that. Don't be stressing about that. In fact, I hope that you will carry into your next phase, and indeed into the rest of your life, 2 very childlike qualities. The first is, I hope that you will always have a willingness to receive. Children do this. They receive. I especially loved it when my children were small, and anything I gave them, they said, thank you. Oh, thank you, Daddy. Thank you, Daddy. I long for those days, actually. But children will actually receive what you give them, and they'll receive it with gratitude. So what is it that you are receiving? Well, this is what we want you to receive. The great legacy of your forebears. And it is a substantial legacy. Your legacy, the legacy that you receive, is the writings of Shakespeare, and the music of Mozart, and the thinking of the ancient Greeks, and the wisdom of the Chinese, the constitutional legacy of our nation's founders, George Gershwin, the music of the Beatles, the technologists, the scientists who invented vaccines and computers and the internet, your teachers at this school, your parents. We want you to receive all of that. And frankly, one primary purpose of your education here has been so that you can receive all of that, to receive it, to understand that it's sacred, that it's a precious inheritance. Hopefully you leave Pinewood understanding that the world was populated by marvelous, wonderful thinkers and achievers, and you have been warmed by fires that you didn't build, and you're drinking from wells that you didn't dig. This is the one thing that we hope that you receive as children. So the second thing that I hope the second childlike quality that I hope you will carry with you beyond Pinewood is a contradiction. It's a complete contradiction. So get used to that. Life full of paradoxes, okay? So here's the contradiction. I hope that you'll also carry with you that childlike quality of outright refusal. My children have perfected that. It's the hands on the hip, it's the scowl, it's the incredulous expression. You expect me to clean my room? That type of thing. We hope that you will carry with you that kind of skepticism and criticality into the world that you now inherit. There must be, on your part, an unwillingness to accept the world as it currently is. This is what all of us wish upon you. The world that we have made so far, wonderful though it is, still is not good enough. We're still characterized by faults and by inadequacies. Now there's something interesting. Generations can't see their own sins very clearly. I think about my own self. I don't see my own sins and shortcomings very easily. That's what we have wives for. And thank goodness for that. Perhaps in your literature studies, you read the great book by Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol. Wonderful work of literature. The reason I love that book is because the central character was given this remarkable gift. He was given the ability to see himself through a new lens, to see himself as others saw him, and to understand himself in that way, and ultimately to see himself as God saw him. To have that kind of clarity upon yourself is remarkable. Through generations of time, we have not always had that kind of clarity upon ourselves. I mean, think about this. Think about women over the millennia. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. 1,000 years ago, women were property. 200 years ago, women really still couldn't read. 100 years ago, women couldn't vote. 50 years ago, women could not participate equally in the marketplace. Even today, I would submit that we're not home free here. Women continue to face things that aren't absolutely and precisely correct or fair to them. So isn't that interesting? And it's so easy for us to see it now as we look back, and yet those generations of time did not have the eyes to see it. This is fascinating. Slavery is another fascinating example. Hard to believe, but for generations of time, we couldn't grant humanity to all people. And anybody who was contrary was greeted with the same defeatist answers, which are, it can't be done. It would hurt our economy. It would hurt our cotton plantations. It would ruin our sugar crops. It might dent our balance of trade, right? But then finally, a new generation rose up and said, enough of this shame. This is shameful, and it's not right, and it will not continue. Vietnam was the scourge of my generation. So the question is, will you be able to have the same kind of clarity upon your own generation and understand your own shortcomings and your own sins? I don't know. And what might be the sins of your own generation? I don't know the answer to that one either. But I'll just throw out a possibility. It's how interesting it is that 5% of human beings are currently making more than 50% of all the greenhouse gases that we release into our atmosphere. It's fascinating. And it's also fascinating that so far we're fairly reluctant to address this problem, even with a world hanging in the balance. Fascinating. But so far, the responses have been pretty similar to the ones proffered in those previous generations. It'll hurt the economy, right? It'll come at too high of a cost. Somebody in your generation is going to have to rise up and say, the economy be damned. That's what they're going to have to say. And it might be you. We hope that it is you. You will stand up and say, we're doing this because it's right. We're doing this because there's enough of this shame. And I'm only using this as a possible example. There are others. So, graduates, the class of 2010, future generations will look back on you and receive your great legacy. It's also interesting that they'll look on your contributions as though they were natural and inevitable. They won't even understand the nuance, the complexity, the great courage that you showed. They'll just read about it in a history book as though it should have happened. But you know that what you're about to encounter is going to take these kinds of childlike qualities, a willingness to receive and a willingness to reinvent. I'll finally say this: the world that you now enter is not the one that I entered, and certainly not the world that you and that your parents and your grandparents entered. It's far more demanding. It's changing at a greater pace. It is offering you less security. It's also offering you more opportunity. So come on in. We're eager for you to join us. It'd be good for you to go to college first, get some college into you. That'll be good. And then join us. Tackle these problems together. Let's work on these things together. In time, your abilities will come to outstrip ours, and then you will take over. And you will inherit this world, and you'll look at each other, and you'll laugh, and you'll realize that you're just a bunch of regular folks with vulnerabilities and insecurities, and yet you're running the world, and hopefully making it a better place. Now, I have this notion that somehow we are accountable to our forebears. I don't understand how it works, but I just have this feeling that we're going to meet them someday. We're going to meet them, and that encounter will be significant. And in that encounter, we will realize that theirs was the harder lot, that their lives were far more challenging. They lived in conditions that we couldn't even imagine, that they eked out everything they did in the midst of pain and suffering and discomfort. So the real question is, how can we face them? How can we even face up to them? How can we look them in the eye and have any self-respect? The only way it will be possible is if we can say that we were true and faithful to the light and the knowledge that we received, and that we somehow magnified it and enlarged it. Class of 2010, this is my wish and my hope for you. Please now go enter into this next season of your childhood for who you are, for who you're becoming. I truly salute you. Thank you.